Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to see everyone here this afternoon for our annual national conference. It's good to see so many members here, and I think this conference is going to be another huge success. I'd like to first of all congratulate and acknowledge Bill for all the work that he dedicated to making this conference possible, and I think you'll see during the course of the next few days in terms of the speakers that we have, in terms of the off-sites that we have, this is a really good conference. I think, you know, we're going over to DOD, we're going over to CIA, we have a number of embassy receptions as well as think tanks. And so I think, Bill, I want to just thank you for all the hard work that you and the staff, Althea, Leanne, and all the interns did in making this come to fruition. So appreciate it. I'm sure everyone will have a great time. And the attendance was Yeah. I want to thank the conference committee also, in terms, it was chaired by Jim Falk, I believe it was, from Dallas. And so everyone on the conference committee did a great job. So thank you once again. We've had a pretty good year, I think, and we're looking forward, as I mentioned, to a very successful conference and the start of a new year after that conference in terms of our activities. Some of the things we've been focusing on, and you've probably heard me say this before, and I'll just repeat it here, is obviously branding and also in terms of the fundraising. And I want to get into those two things specifically. During the course of the year, you know, Bill and I have had a number of discussions about trying to increase the exposure of the council here in Washington, D.C., not in competition with the D.C. council, but in order, kind of parallel. And the reasoning for that is to be able to do two things. Number one, increase our brand recognition to attract speakers for future conferences as well as for local councils. And secondly, as a possible source for fundraising. The more that people here in the district know about us, particularly large companies, lobbying groups, and I use that in a positive way, lobbying groups, law firms, etc., will be supportive in terms of sponsorships, etc. So we did a number of things during the course of the year, and we thought they were fairly successful. I know a number of our members attended, particularly 1918 members. And we started off in March with President Poroshenko, the current president of Ukraine, when he came into Washington, and we hosted him at the Capitol Visitor Center up on the Hill. And we had a packed audience of over 400 people. As I mentioned, a number of our 1918 members were there. We also had an opportunity to have former Vice President Dan Quayle do a cover-to-cover with us. Obviously, he hadn't written a book, but he talked about the election process that was then in progress for the presidency. So it was good to have him involved in that. And just more recently, last month at the end of October 30th, we helped, along with Knowles, great support from the FPA, as well as a group that is out to build a National War Memorial for the veterans of Desert Storm. We co-hosted a dinner for former Secretary Jim Baker at the Cosmos Club here in Washington. We had a number of companies come to that event. So through a process of expanding our networking and our branding in the district here, we hope to, as I mentioned, not only increase our name recognition, but also our ability to maybe attract sponsorships to future events that the council may be sponsoring. So we're gonna talk about this a little bit in more detail, Bill and I, and see if we can get this down into a regular basis throughout the year. We're thinking of doing something like on a quarterly basis to get the recognition of the National Council going. So that's something that we've been doing. In terms of fundraising, I think about a year ago, I mentioned the fundraising activities that we would like to undertake. And I'm a firm believer in laying a good foundation before we move forward, and I think we've got that foundation going. We've got two things done. We've got a campaign booklet that's been put together, and a draft of it's going to is included in the board packet, so the members of the board should have an opportunity to look through it, and we'll discuss this in greater detail at the board meeting on Saturday. The other thing is to have a successful campaign, you need a campaign committee that's going to be dedicated to moving the process forward. And I'm pleased to say that we have a number of members, that are willing to participate in that. And just to let you know, we've got Carlos Alvarez, we've got Alex Lowry, we have Noel Latif, and I've also gotten Sam Johnson. And just recently I heard from Jim Jones. As you recall, Jim was former ambassador to Mexico and former president of WACA for 2 terms, I think it is. So Jim's on board, as well as Bill and I will be serving on that committee. I'll be looking for 1 or 2 other members. So we've got a plan booklet, we have a committee, we're putting together targets, both corporate as well as individual, that we'll be targeting for fundraising activities, and we hope to formally get the process going sometime at the turn of the year after all the holidays are done with. So I just wanted to let you know that we haven't forgotten this, but we're trying to lay a good sound ground game. Now, having said that, this is not just fundraising for the national office, this is fundraising for you, because one of the things I want to discuss with the campaign committee and other members is how the breakdown will be going, because there's a special segment in there that funds will be specifically raised for the local councils so that we can support your activities. So this is not a fundraising campaign for a national office, it's a fundraising campaign for all the councils and the national office. I want you to be assured of that. And we'll be reaching out to each of the councils, because when you do something like this, you want to make sure you don't step on the toes of the local councils. So we'll be reaching out to the councils to give us recommendations regarding individuals and or corporations that we can approach in their areas, or that we can approach jointly, and how we split the success, that we have any success in raising the funds. So this is a cooperative effort to strengthen the local council's economic situation so that you can better serve your local members and increase your programming and strengthen your programming. And at the same time, it's going to help the national office, because it takes a burden off the national office if you have your own resources that are flowing into your coffers. And at the same time, strengthen the national office, because in terms of staffing, in terms of branding, and doing some serious advertising. So that I just want to make sure you understand that. And when I talk about the local councils, one thing that I wanted to bring up, and I've discussed this with the executive committee, and you'll hear more about this because it's going to be brought to the board this Saturday, and that is the need to upgrade our website. I think there's a great need for the local councils to be able to communicate with each other, to have a resource in which you can refer to get speakers. And so the executive committee has recommended up to $50,000 be spent on a website that Bill's going to turn his full attention to as soon as this conference ends, to start working on it. We need a top-of-the-line website, and we need to get this going as soon as possible. I know we've spoken about this in the past, but I actually took it to the executive committee, got the blessing of the committee for the money, and we'll discuss this at the board meeting. And I want to particularly thank my newly adopted personal local council, which is Peoria, because I've been to Peoria twice this year already. And
we love you.
If anybody wants to get anything in my ear, you got to go to Don Sanford. No, in all seriousness, Don has been very good in terms of basically outlining the needs of not only his council, but in that process of outlining the needs of all your councils. And I think he speaks for a lot of you in terms of the ideas and the needs. And one of the ideas is this great need for us to have a website. So we're working forward and moving forward on this, I should say. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those also. Another thing that I had mentioned during the course of the year is the need, and this goes back to the branding issue, is the need for us to expand our name recognition. And one of the ways we could do this is by having an advisory committee. In other words, a number of people that are non-WACA members that have an interest in foreign affairs, whose names can be associated with us as an informal advisory committee that we can list on our website or on letterhead, depending on how big of the grouping is. And that will help us in terms of networking for fundraising purposes, as well as maybe getting us access to speakers we may not have had access to. So I've started putting together a number of names, and one of the first names I asked, and Paula Dobriansky, who's a previous chairman, and Paul has agreed to serve on it, so I'm happy about that. But other names are like Governor Pete Wilson, former governor of California, for example. I've asked him. There's a former chairman of Bingham McCutcheon before it was taken over. I used to be with Bingham, and it was taken over by Morgan Lewis. But the chairman of Bingham, former chairman, Jay Zimmerman from Boston, is willing to serve on it. So that Jackie Adams, a former TV correspondent for CBS News, has agreed to serve on it. So this gives you a kind of an idea of the type of people I'm looking for, a good cross-section throughout the country in various sectors, business, politics, media, that can give us a good access. I'd like to cap this maybe at 12 to 15 members and see how it plays in terms of what kind of input these kinds of individuals can give us. So that's something that we're looking at in developing. It's not looking, but it's already in progress in moving forward. In terms of finances, I think, Bill can answer the specifics of it, but the financing seems to be moving forward okay. We're okay, we're not in debt. So anytime, my motto is they pay me, I pay the mortgage, and life goes on. So I think we're in good hands with Bill in that sense. It's been working out. Another issue that we've been dealing with is the board size. We have a very large board, over 30 members, I think officially. I think we're down through attrition a little under 30 now. And I've asked Nancy Hamlin from the governance committee to examine the possibility of bringing our board down in size over time. And this is something we discussed at the last board meeting. And the reason for that is I think that we have a smaller board, we have a tighter board where every member is going to be involved in something, and the communication will be much stronger and I think better suited to the needs to respond to the local councils. So I know Nancy's been examining that, and she'll probably be giving us a report on the Saturday's meeting, and we're looking forward to that. So that kind of takes us through the branding, this fundraising, the conference, the organizational structure that I foresee for the board. Is there anything that, Bill, I left out that you want me to I've already praised you, like you said, so I think we're okay. So I've got all that covered, so I think we're okay. So what I'd like to do now, if Bill has nothing to correct or add to what I've said, to open it to the floor for questions or comments from all of you. And yes, ma'am.
Hi, Anna from New Hampshire. I just wanted to ask about the large grant that congratulations, that you all received and how things are progressing.
Let me just say, first of all, I need to congratulate Bill on that also. The EU grant, it's the largest grant that WACA has received in its history. Bill did a great job in negotiating. I think there were one or two little items that are left to be settled, and we've been in frantic negotiations going back and forth, and I didn't hear the last of it. I'm assuming Bill settled that issue, and he can bring us up to date.
Thank you, and thanks for the question, Anna. The first thing I'll say is it is potentially the largest, but it is not actually a grant. It's important to understand that it's a service contract with an organization in Brussels that we're part of a consortium of, and that organization is actually contracting to serve the European Union. We have a team leader who some of you may have met, and I don't know, I think he's not here because he's part of the membership, but Neil Simon has been hired by the consortium to work with our logistics officer, and we will be making that announcement next week, I suspect. This is different than a number of the grants that we have. Well, it's different because it's not a grant, but it's different if it's habitual to speak that way, and I really want to emphasize that it's not, because we are not here to just pass through the money and we know you know your jobs really well, but unlike previous EU activities with us, and unlike some of the program speaker series that you've been familiar with, this one is quite demanding. They have a very specific set of goals that they're wanting to do. We are taking on 50 outside the Beltway projects a year, if we do it. And yeah, that's one a week. And that's why we wrote into our proposal having an extra staff to be part of the team. And the structure of that is that person would be 75% working on the EU policy and outreach proposal, partnership, and 25% for WACA. Practically speaking, the team leader and the logistics officer and the media person will be liaising with councils that are participating in this program. They do have 15 cities in mind already, and some of them, a few of them, were not there, which means we will still perform work there, but it's harder. It's finding new partners. There is an opportunity for roughly 10 councils to participate who are not among the select cities, and this could change in each of the 3 years. So it's partly targeted and partly kind of request for proposal, and they're looking to go beyond. There's no network like ours, which is why, I mean, we are a principal reason why our consortium won. And according to B&S Europe, which is the leader of the group, we won by many, many points compared to our competitors, which included the German Marshall Fund of the US and the British Council and other organizations. We're standing with CSIS, we're standing with Chatham House and IREX, so this is a hugely validating deal for the World Affairs Councils of America. And it has enabled me to pursue something that is connected with this conference, where the last 2 years we've taken you to think tanks. Be on your best behavior. This is a model, and because of our politics especially, people in think tanks are realizing that it can't be an elite to elite conversation here in Washington anymore. They see great value in our platform, and so I see the opportunity to win projects with our think tank partners that create national conversations on all kinds of topics. So that's going to become my job too. We are negotiating some of the financial elements of the package. When we did the 3-year EU program that we're now involved in, that we're wrapping up actually this month, we were not hedged for currency in any way. And actually, ever since we took on the project 3 years ago, the euro has basically declined against the dollar. And so what that meant is your budgets in dollars were 100% protected. The second year that WACA did this project, we worked very hard to connect you, and to Althea especially. We made no money. So this is we're talking about moving potentially a couple of $100,000 through the council network each year. We cannot afford to have a 5 or 10 or even 3% depreciation, because that means tens of thousands of dollars for us that we can't afford that. So we are trying to figure out a way to work around the EU's problem, and we hope that that's done quickly, because we know that they're already planning for the next administration, their head of politics, their trade section, their science and technology section, energy and climate. They all want to get out into the country and start talking about what's important to transatlantic relations. And so what will happen with those who participate is you will go beyond your membership, and you will actively seek to partner with universities, with businesses, with mayors and possibly governors' offices, so that you are bringing in amplifiers, influencers to the conversation. And this should be good for you. It should be good for you because they will get to know you, and they will fund other future activities that you do on your own. So we think this is a win-win as long as we can cross our T's and dot our I's, and that's pretty much where we are. We're going to be discussing what it means for the national office to be participating at this level, because if we direct, as is the case with grants, if we direct a lot of energy to this, a small office doesn't have wiggle room to do that. So we want to make sure that we're not losing our conference, our academic world quest, our regular opportunities to do smaller programs with you, and any of the other services that we're trying to provide, including, we hope, daily chatter, which we heard about earlier today. So thank you for the question. Others? Patrick.
Say we pay very little for our membership. I mean, as councils, but we get back a lot from the national office. Is there anything we can do as local organizations to support either of you or both of you?
Wow, that's like music to my ears. Yes. We've been very deliberate about not raising council dues, and we've heard from others a different perspective, but we believe that for $500, which is what most councils pay, and it goes up to only $3,750 a year based on membership, we feel that we deliver quite a bit. One of the reasons Roman mentioned branding is because we think that even if you're not called a World Affairs Council, but you're part of the network, you are getting something. You're getting something from the opportunity to network here. I know you're paying to be here too. We've looked at a lot of things, like, do we charge more and make the conference free? But what if you can't come? Then you feel like you're not getting it. So that part is a la carte. I think, Patrick, if we are moving to a smaller board, which we're in the process of doing, that also means that financially I got to make up that money somewhere else. It's okay. There are committee positions. I think we need to figure out how we can work regionally more. I want to encourage that. You can be very helpful in making the trip to the spring leadership meeting. If we're going to be doing quarterly programs, and we hope to get a certain foreign secretary on International Women's Day, for example, we'd like you to come to Washington, D.C. We'd like to figure out how we can do something more on the West Coast, because we understand that there's a burden for those who have to travel further economically. So we want to make sure we're touching all of you. But I think there are a lot of different things you can do. 1918 Society, time, helping us execute on this New Horizons fundraising program. I had the good fortune of visiting Orange County, and soon after that I was, just prior, I had a dinner with a group of attendees of a Wilson Center conference, and then we were hosted at the Korean ambassador's residence. And Hyundai is based in Torrance, is it? Anyway, it's in Orange County, and apparently they're not in touch with the local council there. I think opportunities like that, where we can both explain our mission, as the ambassador said today, and make a pitch, we can figure out what the proportion is of the gain, but we will both gain. And I think we need to be strategic about that and do that more.
Patrick, I just want to add something I said earlier in terms of the fundraising. We'll be looking to the local councils to help us in the fundraising, because it's not only going to help us, the national office, but also help you. So I'll just reemphasize what I said earlier, is that you put your thinking caps on in terms of what you can do to help us achieve the goals both on a local level as well as on a national level. And that's going to be very important, because we will become knocking at the turn of the new year to look for your recommendations and to maybe do joint efforts in terms of outreach to individuals or corporations or for donations.
And And also, I'm feeling that this event is going to be very good for all of us. We struggled 5 years ago, and 3 years ago when I took the job, we were trying to come out of a leadership transition problem where we had 5 CEOs at the national office in 6 years, and now I've smoothed that out a little bit. I'm very happy in my work, and our attendance this year beat last year's and the year before several weeks ago. We'll peak at about 250 on tomorrow's lunch, and I'd like to see, I think we don't lose, we tried to create it today, this morning. I think we have been able to capture intimacy as well and good exchanges, but we want to strengthen the conference, and we'd love to have you promote the conference more. We tried to offer you all something this year by the free registration for every 5 paid registrations. Cleveland, Naples, World Boston, Springfield, Massachusetts. I don't mean to forget other people who benefited from that. I think Hilton Head may have gotten close or got their Stamford, Connecticut. We feel that it's valuable to have more of you here. So that's certainly how you can help us. And to the extent that we can together bring, maybe we can bring speakers to your neighborhood, just like we've done with some of the grant programs like Iran. If we can cite a mega speaker and have a national presence there as well, as long as it doesn't hurt you, I think that's good for us.
I'm Sandy from Santa Fe. I'm new to my post and thus new to WACA as well. When we're sitting here in 5 years' time, what are we going to be talking about? What's sort of the big picture future of WACA, given the last 6 months have seen dramatic changes in the global architecture and in not only American relationships with the world, but in the world's relationships with this country and in individuals' relationships in a changing world. So where are we headed as a network, and what are we going to be looking at and thinking about and talking about?
First of all, I want him to be here. Yeah.
It's a 3-year term. That's a very good question. There are 2 ways to answer that question. One is the great philosophical one in terms of where the country's headed and where the world is headed and how we fit into that. But I think your question is more specific in terms of where we as an organization will be going in the context of all this. I think in terms of an organization, I think the strategy, I wouldn't call it a strategy, it's a place or a new platform that we offer. And I think the current political debate that's going on in the country kind of answers your question. All of a sudden, the media has discovered the real America in the wake of this election. The people are looking not only on the East Coast and the West Coast now, but are also looking at what they call the Rust Belt, the hinterland, or the heartland of America, whatever you want to call it, or the flyover zone. All of a sudden, people are discovering that there are people living out there. They have feelings, they have needs that need to be met. And quite frankly, given the situation of the world now, given the state of politics in our country, and given the state of how everyone is recognizing the role of all of America, we as an organization have a very important role to play, starting from this conference on, in terms of bringing the message of what the importance of foreign affairs to the American public, educating them on that, educating the students on this issue, bringing our leadership from the federal government closer to the people in our local councils. In other words, having speakers from the government coming in as well as foreign governments. So I think in terms of education, we have a very strategic role to play. We are a unique organization. If my numbers serve me right, we have 95 councils in about 40 states. So that is a unique role that we can only fulfill. And as something Bill mentioned earlier, dovetails what I'm trying to say here is that I think a lot of organizations in Washington, the think tanks in particular, who want to do programs are starting to realize the unique role that we have to offer. What we have to do is develop a good game plan like this EU program to start servicing the American public and educating them on the importance of foreign affairs, how we fit into it, on the importance of a variety of bilateral relations as well as multilateral relations. So that's a very good question. I think our goal right now is basically education, if you want to put it in one term, which has been a goal of ours all along. But right now, I think we are uniquely fitted because of the political circumstances and because of our organizational structure.
We are in the midst of a strategic plan, and one of the items that is mentioned as a goal is to be in 50 states, and I'm experiencing how hard that is to do in the time frame that we've set for ourselves. Ours is actually a 3-year plan, so I think it's safe to say that that's aspirational rather than reality, because it's very hard to go to places like Oklahoma or Idaho from here and make the case. It costs money and it takes time, and I think I'm reflecting on something that we heard at lunch about the difference between leadership and management, and we to a certain extent, with a 3 or 4 person staff, we're not staying in place, and we're adding things, adding 1 or 2 things a year, but it isn't rapid change. We have, I'd like to introduce to all of you, if Velma and Volker Ending are here. Are you here?
Yes.
These 2 fine people hosted me September 23rd. They're from the World Affairs Council of Greater Miami. We're actually going to meet to approve at the board meeting. Now, we have several councils in Florida, and the fact of the matter is that city is a gateway to the hemisphere. We need to be in Miami, and so that makes sense. We've similarly I've been approached by a council on the east end of Long Island, and I was at the Cape recently with my 90-year-old Tufts professor for an intergenerational Model UN, which was really cool. And the Cape wants a council, and Long Island wants a council. And that's really hard for us if they're just going to start, great decisions groups. Thank you guys, and I hope, we're really delighted that you're here. Operationally, it doesn't make sense for us to have another $500 a year member that's small in states where we already have some. But we do not want to ignore the mission of what we're doing, and we want people who are engaged because they're more likely to, do something about educating their communities than others who don't have the passion. So my suggestion is they come to existing councils, that the Cape would go to Boston and say, how many times a year can we do something with you? And have them pay dues to World Boston, and then maybe World Boston can pay more dues to me. Something like that. But we really can't handle it, and we, if we're struggling to send speakers around to this network already, that dilutes it further. So we really have to be smart about how we grow councils. Really what I've been trying to suggest over the past 2.5, 3 years is that we're doing our best to allow you to do your best. The more that we can cohere as a network, regionally and nationally, I think the stronger we'll be. The more that we can lift everybody's ship higher and keep the big councils engaged with us, but concentrate on councils that need to add things, I think that will make us stronger in the long run. And I should say with the website, we do a pitiful job of really showcasing this network's power. What we need from you is photos, videos, and stuff that will make you want to come to us and share with each other. We need very much to have all that edgy power of policy on our site so that we can also drive traffic to you. That is a major need. Mac.
Well, that sounds like a really good idea. I just wonder, is there a benchmark you would kind of direct us to see how others are doing what you just said?
I am starting to pay more attention to my counterpart associations, and I need professional development too, and there is an organization in this city that does it, so In fact, one of the candidates to be our website, and it's more than that. We need also database help. I live in a land of innumerable spreadsheets. For this conference alone, embassies, think tanks, wherever you're all going, I mean, we just have to track you better. We need to know when you're dialing up to cover. We need to know when you're coming to the leadership meeting, and we need to know how many times you send us student scholars, and we can't just keep making another list and throwing it into a file. But I'm not really answering your question. Yeah, we do need, you know, most of the other associations in town are better funded, but there are some who share our difficulty. Some who share our difficulty in having, although they're very friendly with us and we exchange, having a local council at the same time that there's national, which makes our image difficult to understand to people in this city. Are you DC or are you national? I'm hoping that the website will clearly communicate that. But again, that's Patrick, we need you to send us stuff. We're going to figure out, and I don't think Karen DeBartolome is coming until tomorrow. She's the vice chair at World Denver. She's going to be a little mad at me because I'm a little late with something that she's been very keen about, which is a kind of Google group or a collective way for you to communicate with each other, unmoderated by us. We want to provide the platform. We may dive in there once in a while with suggestions that are answers to questions councils have, but we need you to communicate together. And we've tried it before with the Knowledge Network, but we know that capacity issues plague many of the councils, and so what happens is we build the platform and people don't come. So this time we have to build it and we have to use it, and you'll feel better for that, and you'll trade more, and you know, we're getting more social, and that's how younger people are going to behave anyway, and we all need younger people, so it works.
Deborah Schultz from Greater Cincinnati Work Affairs Council. So you have this neat little video on your website, and I saw it the other day, and we developed a couple videos for our big fundraiser for global education, which we do in Adult World Quest, which I'm sure a lot of you already do. So I said, I think it accrues prestige to us to be able to talk about and or show that video if you're willing to let us, because it says that we're part of this very wonderful network that is throughout our entire nation, and that we share this organization in Washington, D.C. as well. So, I mean, I think there's some real benefits for us to using your organization as you might, well, use ours, that's the wrong word, forgive me, to promote each other. And I do think it's interesting to people to know. They say, well, sometimes they don't know who we are, but then they really don't know that we belong to this fantastic network.
Thank you. I think you're referring to the video that I'm in, and I looked a little younger a couple of years ago, but you're more than welcome to use it. I know that a number of councils have actually put it on their website, which is really great. It would be helpful to use our updated logo, if you would put that on your site, preferably the front page, for just that reason, to show that you're part of something bigger and we will be powerful. The video has helped us in a lot of ways with here in town. I think we need, and that was, by the way, to pursue a specific award, which we got, but we need to do more with video. There was something that I attended earlier in the presidential campaign at Meridian Center, where they were convening people such as Jennifer Clinton of Global Ties and Mary Kane of Sister Cities and scholars and anybody with a diverse foreign affairs background. And the idea was, how can we in a nonpartisan way, I wish that this project worked actually, how can we get it in and around the country? And my thought was, it would be great to do almost kind of front porch videos with people that you do, like we saw a little bit with Dixie, but this is more like real people talking about foreign affairs and the way and in our style. And it could be one-on-one, it could be small community groups, and there is a way to shoot that, and it can be done relatively inexpensively. I don't know, I'm looking for Pat Ryan because he's very handy. Pat, where are you? You actually did a great video that we didn't do a good enough job sharing with Tom Pickering, who came to you for the Iran nuclear.
We stick an iPhone in everybody's face.
Yeah, so you're going to be speaking at Spring Leadership Meeting in March or April to tell us how to do that. Yeah.
It's easy. It takes, everybody's got an iPhone and they're all, people are standing in front of you, just do it.
Okay, you can still speak at Spring Leadership Meeting, but that's how you do it, okay? It's that simple. Tracy.
Bill, we had an opportunity to go in front of Upstate Alliance a while back, and we were presenting information as the new World Affairs Council of America about what the council system is. I think it would be really helpful if the national office had information such as PowerPoint slides readily available, because when I called, y'all didn't have anything already put together. So I put together a presentation for us, but I included very much World Affairs Councils of America, the mission, and the key programs you offer. So I think it would be really helpful for us to help promote the national system if that was readily available to other councils. Because to me that's a big draw when other people are finding out about us, is being a part of this greater system.
I think we need to do that, and I think we need to also update what used to be our white papers, if you will, that probably are gathering mold and digital dust. But that's an example also of that's not a priority to jettison, but that is a priority to think about how do we find our time and your time together to work on it.
Well,
How,
I can send you what I did.
yeah.
And I'd
yeah.
be happy to send you
Yeah.
what I did, but again, it may not be, what everyone else would choose to use, but I can send it to you, and then I just think if we had
Lovely.
those easy avenues, that it could be used more often.
Yeah, and I think, as with the global education, the good thing about a slide deck is you can remove and add as it's appropriate, and we can have pages for you that are enough of services that, and I'm very sensitive to making the case to those of you who have people on your boards or whatever who are questioning why you are belonging to us or, spending your time in Washington this week. So I'm motivated. Derek.
Bill, Derek from Oregon, I just want to thank you and encourage you to continue to work with Global Ties. For those of us who are members of Global Ties as well, it's great to see them, advertising in the bulletin, and some of us from Global Ties are meeting tomorrow. And I would encourage you to consider doing like maybe a WACA meeting on the margins of maybe.
As a matter of fact, we have been since I came on, and we've brought Kathy Johnson, who runs the U.S. Diplomacy Center project, and last year a young man who's a director of a well-received Afghan documentary film, which I think showed in Kentucky and Albany and Vermont. So I'm glad that our breakfast for the 30 of you who are part of the Global Ties Network has delivered some value. It's also a chance to exchange views. So we want to do that, and if you're belonging to other associations, there are some of us, it's a much smaller cohort who are tied to World Trade Centers or institutes. That's another opportunity for us to do a partnership or collaboration there too. But yes, we will do that at their meeting.
Excellent. Thanks.
Angelica.
This is maybe more a thought, a question at the end, but when we do global education and when we do our programming, we're always talking about the world and the importance of connecting with the world, trying to teach kids that they need to be globally minded. The reality is that part of that world is in our own communities, living there. Maybe not in every city, but in most of our cities. We have representatives, we may have immigrants, we may have refugees, we may have communities that are there. So for us in Pittsburgh, because we are a very non-diverse city, that has become part of the activities and the programming that we do and how we try to address refugee issues or maybe bullying in schools or whatever it may be. So I guess my question is, as you're going through your strategic plan, do you see a role for WACA in connecting with the world communities that are in our communities, in addition to foreign policy and globally oriented?
Well, I see that. So we are about engaging the public to think about the world at large and about sophisticated issues of national security and economics and so forth, and have discussions that are important. But we have a segment of our populations locally who are not served by that and who have their own needs and who come from all kinds of backgrounds, and that council engagement with those people provides a cultural connection. If I'm paraphrasing you, a general sense of humanity, after all. So I think that's certainly a value that I share, and I think it really falls to the councils to do that. If there's a way we can support that by a partnership at the national level, I'm happy to do that. We actually, a while back, when we were trying to extend what was a very successful 2-year large grant program on the combating human trafficking, which affects everybody, every locale. We were trying to develop, because we didn't feel we could win it alone anymore, we reached out to the YWCA. It ended up actually, I think the Girl Scouts of America got involved in Minnesota, and it was time for us not to continue that program. But that's, our thinking is there, but I think it's really good. That question is more likely to be driven by you. I think the other thing is, there's corporate social responsibility, and why isn't there nonprofit social responsibility? We live it in our lives, but there are other benefits to our, doing those activities and letting people know we're part of a council, I suppose.
I have a question about competition. It's Tom Reed from San Diego, and we're from a chapter up in North County. Well, looking at the city of San Diego, we have a Citizens Diplomacy Council, which is taxpayer funded. We have 2 state universities, which are taxpayer funded, and they all compete with the World Affairs Council. I wonder if you could comment on it. How do you compete with the taxpayer funded groups that do almost the same thing?
Well, the Citizen Diplomacy Council is part of Global Ties, and so some of the people here who do not, of the nearly 30 councils that belong to both associations, they're fine. They're doing that work as one. Philadelphia is a city that manages to do very well with a World Affairs Council and a International Visitor Center, but I don't know exactly what they call themselves anymore. But anyway, those are 2 kind of uniquely in our ecosystem, 2 very large organizations that are both very successful doing what they do. I'm sure there's overlap in their boards, there's, or there has been, or maybe one goes from one to the other, but I don't see it as a competition. I think change the frame of reference. I think there ought to be ways to collaborate for those, because funding is scarce. It makes you think maybe this is a competitive thing, but I would open it up to how can we convene together
Let me just add to that, and from my own experiences traveling around the country, meeting with the individual councils, and I'm sorry to pick on Don again, but I think Don has a very good template for that. He has a local council in Peoria, but he's got two universities, Eureka College and Bradley University, and the programs I attended and participated in, he did them jointly with those universities, and I think that's a good role model that you might want to talk to Don how he structured that. But I would just emphasize what Bill said. We exist, but we don't exist in isolation, and we shouldn't be looking upon this as a competitive thing with other organizations. I think the more we could take the lead in terms of getting organizations to cooperate with us, I think the American public and we are better served as an organization. So I would greatly urge you, to reach out to the universities and the other groups and see if you could structure some kind of joint programming. And Don, I'm sure, will be more than happy to sit down and talk to you how he's done that.
Okay.
My name is Earl Anderson. I'm from the Naples Council. I'm also a member of the Vermont Council, and our executive director is here. And I think the Vermont Council has done a very good job of finding a niche for itself in the kind of setting you were talking about, where you have 3 or 4 major colleges or universities. So the competition for lectures is could be fairly stiff. So they've kind of gone down another road, and so I would encourage you to speak with Trish to find out how they did this. I've really been quite impressed.
We want Tricia to share that. And Mary, you are in a pretty competitive city, as I recall.
Yeah, we have a couple of universities in Boston. That's true, and we should talk about it because it is a struggle. But I wanted to touch on this notion of competition and its reflection. I can make a reflection as well as ask a question. But I can turn it into a question. What we were talking about earlier, the sudden discovery of the heartland and front porch interviews, and also the notion of competition, there's a thread here, and that is individuals. What is different from a taxpayer-funded organization about WACA is that it is a 501c3. And if you donate to World Affairs Council of America or to your local council, you get a tax deduction because it's good for society. And I am thinking that there has to be a way in our new political and international reality to convey a message of, okay, you want to express your personal concerns for international engagement. Here you are on your front porch, and here you are making a personal donation to World Affairs Council of America, or maybe Boston, or whoever. It won't change our funding radically, but big donors love to see individual participation. And with our 95 councils, that's something that, X University or Brookings or even some of our distinguished colleagues in the international space can't touch.
Absolutely. We have to close because Althea gave me the signal. I just want to relate that when I was on the Cape in early October for this Model United Nation, what was really a nation's effort, and the topic was water, very appropriate to the peninsula. The beautiful thing about it was it paired senior citizens with high school students, and they each pair represented a country. And the UN Association is a separate organization, and this was not a council-led thing, but mainly it got me thinking that even in areas where you have some affluence on the Cape and frankly some poverty, there is an opiate problem there, like many places. It brought people together with different views. There were retired Foreign Service officers there. There were people who have very hostile views to immigration, and yet it was conducted. The topic was water, but I mean, talk about competition someday. It it was what I think we strive to do. And we need to think about how we can build networks, link up with as many groups as possible, because we're, you know, as we saw today, there are a lot of small councils here. And partnerships are really a part of the solution there. So anyway, I have felt that there's been a lot of fruitful conversation today. I hope it's been valuable to you. We're available to you when we're not running from session to session, but I hope that you get everything you wanted to out of this conference. Please feed back to us. The sessions today where there were note takers, if you can process those later on for the benefit of us, and then therefore the benefit of everybody who was here and even those who are not here, that would be helpful. So thank you. Thanks for coming.